Hello, welcome to the G.I. Joe New News Review. I am David Allen. The following content was originally intended for the G.I. Joe fan club, but due to unforeseen circumstances, this content will no longer be used in that venue. And so I wanted to share them with you here. I hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome to G.I. Joe Fan Club Live. I am David Allen. I am joined by my co-hosts, James Kavanaugh Jr., Jason Packard Jr., and my special guest, my other co-host, Dan Klingensmith Jr., and you can call me David Allen Jr. So I bring to the table G.I. Joe content through New News Review, G.I. Joe comics reviews, and product reviews. James Kavanaugh is the author of the RAHC guide and the Rank and File series of guides, and he's the head of G.I. Joe Fan Club. Jason Packard brings to the table custom ephemera like magnets, stickers, blueprints, and cool magnets. No, not magnets, cool challenge coins, sorry. And then, of course, Dan Klingensmith Jr. is the author of the G.I. Joe creating, make sure I get this right, because I don't want to misread this. Creating G.I. Joe, the series and content on YouTube and so forth, right? Is that all right? Also, I forgot to mention last episode, Brian Sauer is our special tech wizard that does all of our graphics and all of our credits and all that stuff. So I want to thank him for being helping us with the show. And we also have our other third co-host, Jason Morrell, who's not on this episode this week. Our co-host for G.I. Joe Fan Club Live will be rotating every episode. Dan Klingensmith, Jason Packard, and Jason Morrell will each be on different episodes as we go forward. So thank you guys for all joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Definitely glad to have you guys on. Got to bring the A-team in.
So the thing about G.I. Joe Fan Club Live is we are going to discuss different aspects of the G.I. Joe brand every episode. So last episode, we talked about G.I. Joe comic books. This episode, we're going to be talking about G.I. Joe Kickstarters and custom made products for the fan base. Whether these are Hasbro authorized or not, we're going to be mixing and matching because all us four individuals each have our own products that we put out there through the G.I. Joe community. I, of course, do custom content through G.I. Joe New News Review and comic reviews and product reviews. James Kavanaugh obviously is the author of several series of books, and he's doing the fan club. Jason Packard does all kinds of cool tchotchkes for the G.I. Joe community and a set of beautiful G.I. Joe challenge coins. And of course, Dan Klingensmith has been doing the creating G.I. Joe, the history of G.I. Joe, for now almost 10 volumes. And so each of us has a little bit different experience to bring to the table in this episode. So I'm going to start off with James. James, you started doing the rank and file guide in the early 2000s because it covers from 97 to 2010, if I'm not correct, right?
Yes. And even give you a quick history on that, which again is a guy that started going to JoeCon in 04. Around 05, I started doing printed file cards and custom card backs and catalogs every year. Because I worked in the printing industry, I was able to create some printed objects. The genesis was a guy, Todd Wensler, Magnum 6 Delta, created an image file card, Valor Venom Jungle Viper file card. But because they did the 2005 Jungle Viper, the club did, but the club never provided Hasbro accurate file cards. They would just give you this business membership card and the bio would be on the back. So and he did it just as a throwaway gag on a forum, and I'm like, I can recreate that. So I surprised everybody with those, and they took off like hotcakes. And ever since then, which we can provide some images for reference. Ever since then, I would do it till the end of the G.I. Joe Collectors Club convention 2018. But then, yeah, that was the gateway to answer your question, to indeed start off with the Real American Hero guide or RHC guide. You can fill in the blank, but because it's unofficial, it's just RAHC guide. And yeah, that was 97 to 06, followed by the rank and file series, which started the 4-inch, archiving the 4-inch figures. And the quick 2 cents of that is, creating a 172-page book, volume 2, i.e. the 25th, to say Retaliation, was taking forever. I had 80% finished of 10 chapters. I said, forget it. Let's just get 100% of something done. And that's why I put out 52-page rank and file guides, 1 through 5, and it'll end in 1 through 7.
And trust me, those are so important to the community. Belomo did his book, but that book was done in the late 90s, and there wasn't a reprint until like 2013, I think, the second printing. And then he just did the third printing like a year and a half or so ago. So your stuff filled the gaps that a lot of the collectors didn't have. Really, to be honest with you, that helps me tremendously because I'm filling in all that stuff now. And how else would I find it? I know GIJOE.com existed, but it's not a very accurate site from what I have experienced. So I appreciate that a lot.
Well, thank you. No, it's always rewarding to hear someone like you and everybody else that's given me praise throughout the years that kind of keep me going. Quick fine tune on that. Belamo put his book out in 05.
Oh.
And I know this because, that's, and I, especially now without the dust settles, and I can give him a more direct kudos. He inspired me to write do the 97 to 06 book. I had this real cathartic G.I. Joe Zen moment hanging out with the guru in 05, and just really, of course, as a designer, I have a degree in design. I worked in printing, blah, blah, blah. And of course I love G.I. Joe, enamored with his product. And I'm like, are you going to do, everybody's like, you going to do 97 dose plus? I mean, it's 2005. So, you're going to do it. And he's like, no, absolutely not. And I'm just like, all right, well, maybe I'll give a hand at it, try my hand at it. And I told him, and that's at the time, everybody's like, yeah, who isn't doing a book? That was a running gag. Like everybody's doing a book, get back in the line. Everybody's got a whole lot of nothing. And so, but yeah, absolutely. My books are indirectly designed, well, directly, indirectly designed to piggyback off his books. And I'm lucky enough, honored enough that he'll agree with that in some sense.
Cool.
And vice versa,
Very good. So Jason, you have been doing G.I. Joe ephemera for as long as I've known you, since 2018. Stickers, magnets, blueprints, all this cool stuff. And you got into doing these beautiful series of challenge coins on particular anniversaries of certain anniversaries of dates in the RAHC era of G.I. Joe from the 80s. Can you give us a little bit of information on that?
So I like to run off of key anniversary dates. Typically, when a commemorative coin comes out, it's based on a 5 or 10 year period. So, for example, in this year coming up, 2023, it's the 30th anniversary of Create a Cobra and the derivatives of that, which could include, the Coil Trooper. It could also include Target, just derivatives of that particular body mold. 1993 is also the anniversary of a very particular Toys R Us exclusive playset that I very much liked and had when I was a kid. 2023 is also the 40th anniversary of a very particular combat jet fighter, of which we all know and love very much. And of course, it's also the 35th anniversary of something else. In 1988, what did we get? We got a lot of stuff. Iron Grenadiers, for example. there's a lot of different key dates you could use 2022, 2023 for. And then 2024 is going to be the same general idea. You can definitely do an anniversary. If anyone doesn't know, 2023 is also the 100th anniversary of the Hassenfeld brothers toy company, which evolved into Hasbro in 1950, I think it was, if anyone knows. But in any case, should I talk about coins now, or is that kind of a later thing?
No, we can bring it up. I just wanted to touch on what how you got into what you're doing and stuff like that. So, Dan, you've been doing the creating GI Joe, the history for God as long as I've known you. The first Joe Con that I went to, and I think it was 2011, I met you, and you had, I think, the first volume there, or the first 2 volumes. And this has got to be a very arduous project, because you've got to find all this background of these characters that were 30 years then, now 40 something years now.
Yeah, I mean, the original concept, my inspiration was after an interview Ron Ruda had, I think, with Kevin Watts on Yojo. I think I read it, and it just inspired me. He said something about recognition, and I think he mentioned that a certain department got a lot of recognition. So with my current job and how we work in a very team environment, it got me thinking. And so I was inspired to do, kind of create the book. Went through different iterations, I guess. Because originally I only had a lot of carded stuff. So originally I was just going to show a carded, essentially like a Belomo book, but all carded figures, right? And then got into some of the pre-production stuff, and then it just kind of went from there. But yeah, 2014, I want to say, is when my first volume came out. What you may have seen was a sample probably at Joe Cons, because my first Joe Con was 2010. I went to Orlando in 2011. 2012, I think, was that New Orleans, James?
Yes.
I didn't go to that one because my son was born.
Well,
and then 13, 14, and so forth, I did go.
I was only at the Florida ones, so whatever ones you were at, I was at those. So those are the years.
Okay. I remember us having lunch in Texas, and you having your roll, and you whipping out the large. I mean, I got to see the preview spreads.
I still have it, actually.
Once upon a time.
Yeah,
no, it's excellent.
So, yeah, I mean, because I know on 2013, I think, was when I originally pitched it to a couple different publishers at Comic-Con. And so Dave Dorman was kind enough to give me a pass. And so a couple different publishers I went to, and had a pitch book, which now I look at that pitch book and I kind of cringe a little bit, but hey, it was a pitch book. And then James and I, we had lunch, and I showed him kind of what my thoughts were. And I still have those, actually, James, I think, for historical purposes. And essentially it kind of looked like the foul card, and then I think I had tan background back then, but went a little bit different. But
yeah,
so he and I talked, and so we kind of picked his brain a little bit, got some input from him. But yeah, so I've been doing the books, I think, I want to say 14-ish, 15 maybe, I don't know. I try to do 2 a year. This year I'm doing 3, so it's cranking. I got about another year on contract with Hasbro, so I think I calculated maybe another 2 books, maybe 3, but I'm shooting for 2 right now. I think I can get it done within 2. So
nice. I just saw you post your covers. They pop. They look sharp.
Thank you.
They do.
Yeah, the orange one I was unsure about.
No,
the green one I finally found a green. What's that?
It really works, unless you want to go with what Patty Stewart did with that, like, rust gold. Maybe you could do a homage to articulated points or something.
Nice. Articulated points edition. Maybe you can maybe get them to sponsor one.
Yeah, that would help. Yeah, I try to pull from, Serpentor. The challenge is, I had that lighter green color that was kind of the Dreadnoks, the light green on the Swamp Fire and all that, for number 6. And then I've done number 10, I Scarlet's in it. So I was like, all right, let's see if we can get an orange cover here. And so I think it looks decent. I mean,
they both
with what I have right now. But I finally found that green because I went back and forth and it's still too light. And then I had a really bright lime green. And even my daughter is like, I don't like that. So when an 8-year-old says that, you kind of have to take her advice. So I found that green and I'm happy with it. I'm happy definitely with number 9. Number 10, it's growing on me, but it'll take a minute, I'm sure. But I need to, I need to do a variety of colors. So it doesn't, look the same as a previous volume. So.
Well, it looks nice on the shelf when you see the rainbow of colors.
Yeah.
It's beautiful actually when you have them faced out like that, which probably not a lot of people will do that, but I think they look nice. But so we've actually been in kind of a renaissance, and you guys could each give your opinion of this. That Kickstarters are like huge. G.I. Joe community has been supporting the Kickstarters since Matthew LaCroix's and Schiermeier's Kickstarter like 2.5 years ago from Joe Con. They went to 2000, I think it's 2020 maybe, was that Kickstarter. And from then till now, we've gotten the Robo Skull, we've gotten Carson's book, and then Carson's roll call toy line, and then the Operation Recall. I'm getting them all mixed up. There's so many. And then there's Operation Longbow, right? And then Dan, you have yours, and there's a couple other lines going on right now, Kickstarters. And then there's Roger and Josh's books. But what do you guys think about this renaissance of Kickstarters with the community, how they've supported this? James.
Oh, well, sure. And well, if you really want, if I was to really sit there and be the historian of G.I. Joe Kickstarters off the top of my head, it's probably a Boss Fight in 2014 that really, their first Kickstarter, and that hit, what, 500,000, hair under, like 400,000 to 500,000. And this was also when Kickstarter was somewhat fresh. And I don't know when Kickstarter was founded. I'll spitball 2012, 2013. But Boss Fight, not only did it just blow, our world out. All right, you know what? I will back it up one further. Something tells me Marauder John was actually the first, and he would do his Kickstarters there. And as I say that, I think he did 187,000, which was, again, like, this is Kickstarter's such a wild west. You'd think maybe 20,000, 50,000, or just, like they would hit their goal, and then just whatever it was a modest goal. And not just with toys, but with anything, like, you're kind of taking a risk. Are these people going to run off on you? Because there's no guarantee that you actually get said product. If you really want to take it to the letter of the law, it's just, you're giving that money to be a swell guy, and then they just happen to be giving you something, like the Kickstarter, they're not obligated to give it back. But in any event, I know Carson used to do all his books Kickstarter and a lot of his posters. You keep going. Dan, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, when he jumped in, he would do his books. I even did my reprints. I knew my originals, I could, based on my costs and my sales patterns, that I could, and I can fund. I mean, single with no kids, knock on wood. I can, put out the money and make my money back on books. But my reprints, I wanted to put in the hands of the true demand in the hands of the fans, and they always came through. But then, but to your point, absolutely, it's certainly just skyrocketing. I mean, well, not only is Kickstarter just the thing, it's more ubiquitous at almost, let's just call it 10 years in Kickstarter or crowdfunding history. It's permeated into the masses. It's tried and true no matter what you're into. If somebody's ill, in the community, you can do a GoFundMe and make some money. But no, absolutely. I mean, not only are the Kickstarters becoming more frequent, they're just becoming more and more phenomenal. It's almost like people are topping each other. I'm going to do a Robo Skull. Well, I'm going to do a G.I. Joe compendium, or I'm going to do an O-ring toy line.
The Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Bible. So it's great. No, the G.I. Joe is just in a renaissance as a whole, with the 6-inch classified, 4-inch retro, O-ring retro, way more merchandise than we've seen in forever. it's going.
Dan, what's your take on this?
I mean, kind of to follow suit with what James is saying. I mean, it's great to see all this new product coming out, because for a couple years there, like, when I myself, like speaking for myself, there wasn't much out, as you guys know, at G.I. Joe. So, my book was always fun because it's like, hopefully something new for you, because there was no new product on the market. And, people were buying old stuff that they maybe wanted, but this is hopefully something fresh and new. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great. The communities has always gotten around creator projects from as long as I can remember. Like James said, I don't know who's first, but I've always, been very appreciative because I tried to do my first book. I tried to do like a pre-order, and failed miserably. So you learned from that, and I learned price points, and then I learned also just the thing about Kickstarter, which is interesting, is it creates that urgency for a lot of people, because you're either in, like even with I think Carson's book, if you were in, you got it at that price, but now if you've waited, now you got to pay more. And so so it does create a sense of urgency from experiencing it, and it helps it come to fruition as well. And I'm unlike, I think, a lot of Kickstarters, from what I've been told, and again, this is from what people have told me, is I try to turn my product around quick. And it's different. I mean, I'm not creating a toy line, so I get why, but I do try to turn it around very quickly so it can get in the hands of people shortly after the Kickstarter ends, so it's still fresh in their minds.
I know. I got the last book. You shipped it out on a Sunday. I think I got it on a Wednesday. I was astonished. I got it in like 2.5 days because you're coming from the West Coast and I'm in Florida. Everything's delayed coming to Florida. Whenever I order something, I'm like, oh, it's going to be 3 days late. It's going to be a week late. It's Florida. But I got your book first. I think that's the fastest I got anything. It was like almost overnight. It was astonishing.
Yeah, the last one yeah, well, the last one I went to print, they had ended. So the date ended. I mean, I could have gone earlier, of course, but I try to get it out as soon as possible. With these next two, because I'm doing 2 books at once, I'm still writing the beginning part. So the art part is done, I guess, if you want to call it that section of the book. That is done. I'll be submitting that this weekend or probably early next week. By the time this airs, they'll be out by then. Yeah, so I'll be submitting it to Hasbro for approval, and then I need to finish up the writing part. I just have a couple more interviews to do, and then lay out the beginning of the book, which is the history of the brand, but also the process. So number 9 covers the tooling and manufacturing and testing, and number 10 I jump into kind of like what was going on in the background while all that stuff was happening. So all the packaging and stuff like that. And number 11 is going to cover, I think I'm going to do sales and then Toy Fair. And then number 12, which is the last one, I talked to Kirk Mazigian. I said, we're going to wrap it up with a bow and really bring marketing in and talk to, because marketing has been involved from the get-go, but it's been hard to incorporate them into the process because it's back and forth. So the last book will really focus on the marketing side of the house and the different promos and stuff like that. So we talked a little bit about some different directions I'm going to take with it, but not quite there. Those will come probably spring of 23.
Cool.
Nice.
Jason,
I'm excited.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, man.
Oh no, just saying, I'm excited. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be some wild stuff.
I get a lot every time I get a new one. I read it like immediately. It's like candy in my hands. I read it and I get all this new information. People that know me know that I love information. I want to know how the sauce is made. That's my new catchphrase. I want to know how the sauce is made.
What's in the sauce?
Yeah. Ooh, not that, James. Not that. Yeah.
Well, not dirty. That
Yeah,
song,
well.
What's in the sauce? I am the sauce. Whatever.
So,
That's
Jason, you make custom products of your own, but you don't do it through Kickstarter. What is your view of the whole Kickstarter phenomenon, and why aren't you doing yours in the Kickstarter format?
The reason why I don't is because I self-fund all my projects. One of the reasons why I do that is that if you've noticed over the years, a lot of these Kickstarter projects, sometimes they don't deliver, and people start getting very bent out of shape about them. And obviously, complaints, reputations, people get angry, and that was something I didn't want to introduce into my life in any way. So what I do is I fund everything I do myself personally, right? For example, the Create a Cobra coins, understand this, the Steel Brigade, the Create a Cobra coins that I'm doing, the commemoratives, those are something that I purchased them all. And then if someone gives me their data, I have them engraved. They're not bought ahead of time. I don't collect any money from anybody until they're actually ready to be shipped, which I think is a more, I guess you say it's a somewhat less headachy way to do it, because the thing is, if someone gives me their data they want and I don't deliver a card and a coin for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, they don't really have much of a complaint, do they? Probably not, right?
Sure.
That's why I don't do Kickstarters. I'm a man of the means with which I can fund a project, where if I need 100 coins or 200 brass challenge coins, I can simply contact a factory, give them my design, my graphics, they'll make it. And then I don't have to deal with, of course, trying to collect pre-orders from people and having people start to ask me after week number 2, hey, where's my ... where's my this, where's my that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also to say about the G.I. Joe, like, we're seeing a renaissance of what's going on with G.I. Joe nowadays. I think there's like more new product nowadays than there has been in a very long time. And one thing important for people to realize is maybe you want to focus on what's important to you, because there's so many different things. There's the classified line. There's a new retro O-ring line, right? There's a Lego type G.I. Joe stuff out. There's Mezcos. There's little snap together model kits. I mean, there's so many cool looking things now. Oh, and the reaction, the 5-point of articulation ones.
Yep.
It's really up to the individual what you want. I am very, very particular about just O-ring style figures. The only time I'll go away from 82 to 94 is if it's like a convention box set, or a premium figure like the new the Viper, the Officer and Trooper 2-pack. So I'm a little bit less traveled than you are, David, when it comes to, like, you seem to have pretty much everything that comes out, you get it. And I'm like, I don't want that. It's not what speaks to me as a product goes. But anyways.
I think you're correct in your assertion that the brand is so wide and the breadth of products out there is so wide in today's market. And to Dan's point earlier, the market wasn't as wide and the breadth of product wasn't as wide probably 5 years ago. We were in probably a 6 or 7 year slump when it came to product. I think the only thing that came out was Mark Webber's 50th anniversary figures, and you might see a big fancy like $500 figure or something like that through one of those big companies, but that's about all that was coming out at the time. So you guys' Kickstarter books and Carson's Kickstarter books and that type of stuff was really keeping the Joe community alive, with the exception of the Joe Club. That was about all that was coming out for like 8 or 9 years.
I mean, the 50th. Yeah, and to Jason's point, I think, to collect what you like, for a while there in the 2000s, and James, you can fix me in all the years because you know all this.
Sure.
The Palisade stuff, got all the little mini busts, all the 12-inch. All the 12-inch Valor versus Venom and G.I. Joe versus Cobra and all. I got all that stuff at one point. I got all the 2 swords So I was that guy a while back, you know, and I was gonna just bind everything. And at one point, I mean, I did have everything from 82 to 50th, and then I had all the convention sets. So everything, one of everything, you know, I had one of everything, you know, branding and all that. But
Nice.
there comes a time, to Jason's point, where you start making decisions. And so, you know, I started thinning out stuff. I got rid of a lot of my convention stuff, which I should have waited apparently, because that stuff's increased in value. But I needed the money for other stuff. And then, you know, I got rid of all the Spy Troops and G.I. Joe versus Cobra, and I kept Pursuit of Cobra because I love it. I love that line. Retaliation, I got rid of most of my stuff, as well as Rise of Cobra. And then the 25th, I don't know. I keep debating, going back and forth. I don't know if it's just the classic art, even though I have all the originals. It's just a new style body, maybe. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point where I'm going to let go of that. You know, I mean, for space, it'd be nice sometimes, but, and then now my focus now is just the pre-production. I mean, it's really it was cool in the beginning. I get some pre-production pieces here and there and stuff, but now to me, I feel like I moved into like preservation and preserving the brand as best as I can, whether it be documentation or just pre-production items or whatever it may be, artwork, 3D, whatever. So, but to Jason's point, I think he made a great point. Like, focus on what you enjoy, and don't put yourself so much in a hole where, you know, then now you have to sell it all because you went too deep. So, just my 2 cents.
That's what he's been telling me for the last 5 years. Man, I should have listened to him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I don't have everything myself, and if you can do it, kudos to you, because that's a good thing that there really is that much out there that you can get into it. Great. You know, the quick science behind that was the Retaliation didn't do too well in 2013. So they, Walmart and Target declined future G.I. Joe waves. And that's why it went to the 50th. It just slowed down. And obviously the club was going to cancel in 16, but they extended to 18, but they were really winding down until recently. You know, one more, since we were talking, I was going to float Packard's boat. You know, it's obviously he said he was self-funded and all that, but he, at the same time, you know your demand, like you kind of know who's buying, and you do put out a real crisp product. I mean, I like a nice crisp, tight design personally. I mean, if people want to get wild and expressive, that's great, but I do think it's really indicative and sharp and thorough to what people
write the file cards a little bit more themselves. For example, I know I give them an order form, but I tell them you can literally give me anything you want.
Sure.
Some people do.
But you get my point. Like, you know, when you did the create your own, I mean, you went and tracked down the original paper, the old perforated paper. I mean, it's the devil's in the details, and that in turn is just gonna guaranteed sales. I mean, when you hold one of Packard's pieces, you can't deny the quality, you know.
No, it's true.
It's definitely sharp. So, I mean, both you guys do phenomenal. You know, I mean, don't skip on anything.
But to your point, that's a good discussion point. Is each of these Kickstarters, from my point of view, you guys go back farther than me with some of these crowdfunding and Kickstarters. None of them are identical. Like even the figure lines, Matthew LaCroix's Kickstarter line with Schiermeyer is not the same as the Operation Longbow. It's not the same as the Recall line, and it's not the same as the current 2 lines that are being Kickstarted at the moment. They all have different flavors, story elements that make them unique to time periods, and even their construction, which is, to Jason's point, most fans are key on O-ring. So all these lines, even though they're different in their own ways, they're all connected to O-ring. And that has to say something about this community. Jason, don't you think that's a big point with the community at the moment?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we like that's like classified, they're all designs that were derived from, well, the stuff that we had between 82, 83, 84, 85, right? You know,
Mhm.
and that's why they're really popular, because you have to figure the fact here when it comes to the classified line. I want to say the majority of people buying them are generally going to be guys that grew up playing with them back in the day, you know, for the most part, guys in their 30s, 40s, even into their 50s, because they're a more modern type, advanced, better plastic, better detail, better molded version of what we got back in like 85 or 86. And that's why they're popular to a degree, if that
Well,
makes sense.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Dan, you could probably speak to this because you've spoken to a lot of these guys back from that era about the O-rings, and you must really have some insight into why that O-ring style has hit a chord with so many people over the decades that they've done all these Kickstarters.
Well, I just think it's kind of what Jason says, nostalgia. There's a nostalgia piece of it. The classified's fun and new. I've actually gone down that rabbit hole a little bit, which I wasn't planning on, just for that reason. Like, you kind of think back when you're a kid and you're like, oh, these are cool. And my kids actually got into them when they first were coming out, and then there's such a delay in releasing that they just kind of got out of it. And it's all during COVID, of course. What else do you have to do?
Sure.
So they got into it. We took them on a couple trips and they played with them, zip lined them. They work really well with the gliders, by the way, from the 90s. You snap them
Right.
in, they do fly pretty good with them in it. But yeah, the O-rings, I mean, just have an appeal. And I was just talking to, down with my books, I've had an idea for a figure line for, gosh, what year are we in right now? 5-6 years now. And so mine's a little bit different than a lot of people's. And just with having a full-time job and life and kids, being young and books, I haven't pursued it yet. I mean, I've talked to a couple of people about it. But even Kurt Groen and I were just talking yesterday, actually, we were chatting away. Because he's actually I'm putting out a book, a Christmas book that he's going to be illustrating, I think, for me. So my son and I wrote it a couple years back. So little non-Joe related, but we were talking about just figures in general and the appeal of O-ring and he and I have had many conversations about the simplicity of O-ring, where they can't put their foot in their mouth. They don't, their ankles don't move, their feet don't move, their wrists don't move. And to me, I mean, those are fun, but it's like, I mean, you could mangle a character into like a little ball, which, I think for a kid, there needs to be some stability, but I mean, I guess these aren't really geared towards kids. And what I mean by that is, like, standing up. I don't want, sometimes you try to stand up 25th, like my son would try to stand it up and it'd just fall right over because the ankle's bent that way, or, something weird. So, I don't know. I think there's just a simplistic look to them. If that's where you're heading with this. I mean, I'm looking at it right now as I'm looking over. I mean, I've always been drawn towards the package art. That's really what inspired me to collect now card. And then
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just the artwork's is amazing from no matter what year. But the sculpts and just, just have so many memories of it. I think that's why we're all drawn towards it, because like Jason said, I mean, it's just a time in our life when we can go back and remember. And I mean, I remember playing with my buddies at home, and before we had all this electronics and junk, where kids actually played with toys. Like I told my son, I'm like, 87 was probably one of my biggest years when I was 10. He's 10, and he'll play Hot Wheels and Matchbox once in a while, but he doesn't touch really anything else. And so it's unfortunate this generation, won't have that experience, but they'll have their own experiences. Kind of how I've had to view it. So it is what it
I love
is.
the artwork on toys back in the 80s and 90s. It was just fun to be at a Toys R Us, just to walk around. You like a Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Stargate, all these different toy lines. They had real artwork. Now
Yeah.
they just don't. Now they have like digital renderings and just a photograph of the toy. It's just boring, if they even have it.
No, I completely agree. I was just looking at some of the windowless packaging lately, and I get it as a guy that tries to separate his trash into recycling. You know what I mean? I don't have the hair to be a hippie, but you know, I try to do my part. And but looking at that early stage rendering of the, because they don't have the final product in their hand more times than not, they're really doing a high-end rendering. You can see it. It just doesn't even seem real. It doesn't feel like it's real there. I'm thinking of the Thor and Love and Thunder figures in particular. And I'm not trying to outright hate, and I understand I mean, I'm sure the, you know, people working on that aren't happy either, because they're in a, this is all new to them, you know, so they're, and that's even kind of back to the larger point. Like when Dan was talking about the 4-inch 25th figures, that style figure was new to them, and they're working out the kinks. But I can't call it. I got to call it for what it is. It doesn't compare to the plastic bubble packaging, but even then, to go one further, it doesn't compare to the Hector Garrido, Doug Hart, just realistic, hardy imagery that we saw. I mean, I could draw a stick figure and maybe pick like the 3 major colors of every character in those poses, you know, snake eyes, full leg up, one leg down, knee down, finger to the sky. Every one of us is gonna nail that 100%. Like, it's gonna trigger, you know. I can, you know, put a guy in a tan shirt and green pants standing there with a green ball in his hand. You're gonna know that's Duke. You know, like, well, if you
did a silhouette of any probably 80s character, like if you just had a silhouette of it, just a black, you know, like just outline, you know, it's all filled in black. I guarantee it. We should play a game and see one of these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Can we name every character?
I used to do it with, you know, the Facebook default is the dark blue with the light blue head. I would take my G.I. Joe, because I outline every figure, and I'd pop it in there and see if people could guess. And more times than not, they could get it. But that just shows the power of what, I mean, let alone the actual beauty of their work. You know, Masters Universe is another toy line, outside G.I. Joe. This artwork's phenomenal, you know, and just these poses, we loved them. We stared at them endlessly, and you're not going to get that. And yes, so to a whole, and even bring it up back with the 6-inch comments, absolutely. These guys, you could see it the way they started in 2020 with Wave 1 and where they're at with the current 6-inch figures out and what's going. It's getting ratcheted down more and more to just 6-inch versions of our classic 82 to 94, but even they're focusing on the 82 or 97-inch era. You know, that's what people want. Well, and that's what people have the ties to. They can't get rid of those 4-inch figures. Yeah. Because
Immortals announced, right, Jason?
Do what? I'm sorry.
I said a Crimson Guard Immortal was announced for classified, right?
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Has it?
No.
No, not yet.
I'm starting a rumor.
I was going to say,
there is.
You would love that.
There are 3 Crimson Guards. I believe they're going to be announcing in a couple of weeks at the PulseCon, the Crimson Guard Python Patrol. And then they've already got 2 Crimson Guards. The retro packaged version, that's a much brighter maroon or burgundy or whatever you want to call that cover, and then the regular class, which is a darker, more sturdier, more in line with the Cobra Commander that they did earlier version of him. So there's going to be 3 Crimson Guards, but that's one of those characters, you know, there's going to be other versions down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Jason, do you?
I'm already considering moving on from the Crimson Guard Immortal cosplay into something else, just because I'm wacky enough to do some of the other designs, you know. But
if people aren't aware, we have Mr. Crimson Guard Immortal himself on this.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see if I can, get his ears perked up there by saying that.
Yeah, right.
That
did work. Dude, I actually got me thinking about that. No, I'm working on a new costume right now. I had to buy a lot of grenades for this one, so we'll see this goes.
A lot of grenades. All right, let's see who's gonna guess.
So then I'll definitely add you to the cosplay episode of G.I. Joe Fan Club Live. All right, Jason? You and James,
Night Creeper,
my 2 cosplay people.
Nice.
Yeah.
James, when was the last time you did a cosplay? Because I know you did them for JoeCon.
Oh my! I did probably 2017, where I did Serpentor Brian Savage.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
Why
it's been a minute.
Yeah.
I think you wear a costume at least every JoeCon or Joe Fest that I've seen you at. This last one, you were in like a banana suit.
Uh,
That's just
Well,
that's just his
just a
normal
suit.
attire. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
That's your
That's
normal
not a
attire?
costume.
that was my sleepwear. I own for those people listening, I know you can feel free to laugh. I do. I own a selfie studio, and I'm whatever you know of me. I've been this guy through and through. I mean, I literally just ran into some guys from high school, and they're like, "God, you don't change." I'm like, "Yeah, leopard don't change the spots." So I have a Hawaiian suit, and since I had it in the car, I thought I'd be funny guy and wear it on Sunday for this year's Joe Fest, and
Yeah.
people had fun.
I
Why
liked
not?
it. I thought
Thank
it was cool.
He's an
Flattery
updated
gets everyone.
Chuckles.
Exactly. Yeah. I should have worn the wig, with some blonde hair for the day. That's always brings
Yeah,
back
that's
memories.
funny.
But next
Uh,
time, 2023.
So let's get back on topic, but with this. So Carson, he's been really focused with his Kickstarter on the art of G.I. Joe, and he did his series, and now he's got this huge ass like Bible size thing that he's coming out with. I got one of them, and I saw the production version of it. It is bigger than like one of those old TVs. It's huge, and he focuses in a lot of his stuff is focused on the original concepts of G.I. Joe 2. That's why he's doing the recall, Operation Recall. He got a lot of the people to come back and do interviews and do talks about their work, and he put it in the books and stuff like that. That's an interesting project, I've got to say, because he's been working on that for a while. I've been talking to him about that, and he's been doing interviews and stuff. He even was able to get a Hector Garrido interview in there before Hector, heaven forbid, passed on to better pastures. And so I'm looking forward to that Kickstarter. But there are other Kickstarters that are a little bit more independent that are not authorized, obviously, by Hasbro as well, like the Robo Skull. That was probably one of the most successful Kickstarters in the last 2 years, that I think it took the fan base and the community aback a little bit, because that thing funded so quickly that I think people were like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And now people are kind of regretting that they missed it. What do you guys think about those two Kickstarters? James, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. People are definitely regretting it. Story of my life. Can't win for losing. I remember I love telling my story because I hate it. I hate loving it. When that Kickstarter started, I was actually doing a Joe run, and it was still COVID-ish. So I was out, and my Joel Thompson calls me. He's the Order of Battle podcast, Jason Murrell's partner on that. And he's like, dude, it's up, it's live. And I'm like, all right, do it. So I go and do an all in. Well, I'd never done Kickstarter on my phone. And I guess there's an extra confirmation button. I never noticed. And I happened to get another Kickstarter update on that email. So I just, again, I'm driving. I'm not texting and driving. I think I did it as a stop, but I'm not giving my I'm not giving my whole attention to this. And I was confident that I got the all in and moved on. And I saw a Kickstarter email like literally around within minutes of me hitting what I thought was submit. So I missed the all in on Kickstarter until it was over with. Luckily, so to the history, Kickstarter's evolved with the backer kit. I was able to get in there and get stuff. But you're right, absolutely. I mean, people were paying hard on that Kickstarter, paying even more on the backer kit, and still complaining, like you're saying, David, that when they missed out on it. It's amazing. Ben and oh God, this is terrible.
Mark O'Byrne.
Mark, yes, yeah. Sorry, it's been a long day. I apologize, Mark. I'll tell you why it's a long day. Up late last night working on a project, and early in the morning to only find out they canceled the project. So that's my personal life. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, no. I'm more sorry I forgot Mark's name. Or hiccup Mark's name. No, they brought their A game. I mean, they brought the art. I mean, not only did they bring stellar design, that dude just decided, hey, I'm gonna do some 3D rendering one day. Next thing you know, like freaking magic. But then they both reached out. I don't know who did what specifically, but contacted every cool guy in the universe just about to do art and design and marketing, and just really brought a thorough, if you want to study a marketing campaign or try and emulate or punch up what you feel like you're not doing effectively. Well, funny enough, both of them, because Carson's a hell of a marketer.
Oh yeah.
God, that guy just brings, that guy, that's the gold standard in terms of really just getting everything out there, and doing it. Dan and I have talked about that. And Dan does a thorough, consistent, hell of a job too, but Carson's, you know what I mean? But yeah, so then to back up the history, and Carson, if and when he's listening to this, he can tell me I'm way off and I'm stupid, again, he keeps me in check. No, he fell in, not only, he obviously was a package collector, but exactly what Jason and Dan were saying, if and when you're a package collector, you're not just because it's in package and that's better and that's rarer and that's more complete. It's that freaking art, and the caveat, if you want the science behind that, is, so you look at the Transformers have a nice thorough compendium of packaging art, just the art. Jim Sorensen, and I think Bill was involved with that, his partner. But that's a beautiful book in its own right. Well, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong. That G.I. Joe package art in its whole is incomplete due to the sub teams alone being repainted over, but just about impossible to find, and nearly as complete as the Transformer art. And that came out of Hasbro once upon a time. That's a story for beers at Joe Fest. So there, you just couldn't even make. I want to say that if technically Carson would have loved to have made just a G.I. Joe art book, but because he couldn't, due to just simply not having it, and and being unofficial didn't help. It doesn't help either. He stepped it back, which in an odd turn, I think we love even more. It's a nice packaged, complete, crisp. Carson goes in there and cleans it all up, twice now. He did it with the first 6, and he's like, no, these aren't good enough. Do it again. Yeah. Phenomenal book. And of course, once you check all those boxes with the 82 to 94 confines, which get into the theme of the show, that's the real heart of GI. It's always going to be, no matter what the product is, it's always going to be the root product. And this is coming from a guy that seemingly champions 97 plus. And I love them. Obviously I own, those are all my figures. I'm not a non 82 to 94 guy. It's just, at this point, this is where I tell everybody, the quick sense. There's already plenty of books on 82 to 94. There didn't need to be another one. Mark covered it. So I'm not diminishing my role with 97 plus. It's just, I did it because it was new frontier and I could take it on.
What you did is you picked something that no one else did. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why I do challenge points. No one else, aside from a particular costuming group that I may or may not have been associated with briefly several years ago and I'm no longer associated with now, they're the only ones that ever did any kind of challenge points, ever. And then I started doing mine. There's been a couple of imitators. A couple of people have done those. One guy did one in particular that isn't doing very well, but you gotta find a certain niche, where you do a particular segment. You did 97 to 2008, 2009, I think. You're the only person who's ever done a source book on that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, and the finest, I don't have a problem saying they've done phenomenal stuff, but you've certainly taken it and done your own stuff and made it, unique and true to Packard and true to quality. And you're absolutely right. There really wasn't challenge. I mean, the challenge coins were there, but it certainly didn't permeate into the main toy. It's, obviously the cosplay overlaps, but the cosplay also kind of, and maybe I'm overthinking it. It's what I do in life. It permeates into the general pop culture where you're still in the realm more of the local focal G.I. Joe point.
And I think with James, what you've done, we don't know. And I was holding on because when I started considering selling some of the more modern stuff like 2002, 2001, I was like, well, is this the best time? Because I got to a point where I love it. I think it has its purpose. I think, the people that I know who worked on that brand, did great things. It just for me, a lot of it was space. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the spot I'm sitting in right now used to be a gondola shelf, which I had maybe a foot and a half on each side of this thing to walk around this room, and it sucked. I couldn't enjoy this room. And so I just, yeah. I mean, so I just finally was like, all right, some of this has to go. But what will be interesting to know or to see is 5-10 years from now, like this generation, I mean, these kids that played with the 2002, 2001, 2003, they're not quite there yet. They're not making disposable income to where they can afford to go back. And I remember, I mean, my nephew played with them. I mean, my nephew, and I mean, he's 17, 18. He's a senior in high school. 5 years from now, because I started collecting right out of high school. But maybe they won't have the same nostalgia reason to like go start right away. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what the 2000 stuff what will happen. In 10, 15 years, like 2007 stuff. I mean, those kids that played with that stuff, are they going to be into it in 10, 15 years? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
don't know.
a lot of the stuff from the middle years, like 97 to 2001, has reached some level of popularity. There's one particular action figure that has exploded in value for some reason. I can't quite figure out why, but it's done extremely well in that regard because of that. And you want to figure, if you look at like a steel, like the Slugger or the Conquest, those ones from 97 and 98, those are very popular because, believe it or not, the kids that play with those are now about 30, 31, and some of them do have a couple $100 here and there to throw at that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and it's great stuff. I mean, I wish I would have bought more of that stuff, back then.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of the A10s. Yeah. I mean, we know who you're talking about. Don't worry.
The A10s, no, it was another vehicle, some sort of a Conquest, I think. Anyways.
Okay.
Yes.
But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I love that stuff, and like I said, I won't sell the 97, 98. To me, that's still kind of, in my eyes, still classic. It still kind of follows that classic O-ring. And I kept my favorites. I mean, I kept my favorites of 01, 02, 03. The stuff I sold, I kept. It's not to say I don't like it. It's just as an adult. I mean, I remember going to Walmart at midnight. So there's still memories there that were created, but nothing like when we're kids and you're playing in the backyard and all that stuff. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see with what the collector's market's going to look like. Because I mean, I think back of like the guys who were doing all the 60s and 12-inch shows. You don't see many of them anymore. There's a few out there like Ace and Daryl and stuff that I'm aware of, but you just don't see them as often. But I think the difference is we have so much media that was around our brand.
Yeah.
With the comic and that, I think it will last. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think that carried a lot of it. So sorry, went on a rant, but
to touch on what you guys were saying, our other co-host Jason Morrell told me when I was creating my content that I created in a flavor that wasn't being utilized yet, and that's the key, is to find your own flavor that's a unique flavor to you that you can find in the community and put yourself into that and put that out there for the community. On the side of the brand from the 2000s, it is really coming back already. I've seen it a little bit at this past Joe Fest, the 2022 Joe Fest, because there was a lot of people talking about Kamakura and Devil's Due era of comics, and there is starting to be a resurgence of that period. And the fact that Classified, they're making a Kamakura figure shows that there is still people that like that. I think Lenny was a fan of that era, who is one of the brand sculptors at Hasbro at the moment. So yeah,
sure.
It was a great period. I mean, some great stuff. So
yeah, no, I can tell you. Well, again, Joel Thompson, older battle. I'm 45. I think he's 35, 33. So and yeah, well, he'll tell me all kinds of wild stories of playing with Valor Venom this or Spy Troops that as a kid. And I'm laughing. He goes, "Oh, I was zipping around like a mid-20s, you know what I mean, screwball on my lunch break from work, trying to buy the same toy." And real quick, a few other guys, like they came up, they were younger, and they were just loving the Valor Venom spy troops that I was selling. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I played with this as kids." You know, it's not until I stop and think, "Oh yeah, you were kids." And it wasn't just a bunch of mid-20s screwballs on the Devil's Due forums loving this stuff.
Well, but that's the thing though, because if a lot of people that know me has heard my horror story of my GI Joe collection, I restarted. That's where I really restarted. Was in a little bit before that, when that new retro, I can never think of the name of that line, started in like 99, 98 or whatever, 97.
Oh, did we not the I'm looking at them. So
What?
we talk about the 2-packs, the real
Yes.
American Hero packs.
Yeah, the
The-
two
Oh, the
blue
packs.
collector special edition.
Yeah, the
with
collector
with the,
special edition. Yeah.
the
That's where I
helicopter.
restarted. But then when Val vs. Venom and Joe vs. Cobra, I got all that. I have everything that has to do with it, except for maybe some of the vehicles. And then, but I even skipped over Sigma 6 at the time. And that's part of that era too. Sigma 6 is like 2005 or whatever. But a lot of those things, I, as a fan, picked and choose. And now I'm going back saying, ooh, I shouldn't have missed the Sigma 6 stuff. And I'm going back and trying to get it. And it's not there anymore. Those figures are not out there to buy.
No.
So,
Yeah.
so
Are they not?
what was that?
I'm pretty sure if you check eBay, you can find a lot of that stuff from the.
I'm not a big eBay guy. I go to conventions. I
Okay.
like to see people, talk to people, get a feel for the stuff that I'm looking at and things like that. But yeah, once I get into the last handful, the most expensive, I'll go to eBay probably and try to find them. But to your point earlier, Dan, the future of Kickstarters, what do you think is going to be coming out in the future? Because I know Roger and Josh, they're still going to be doing more books for comics. You're doing more books. The fan club is going to be doing products for foreseeable future. What else do you think is a possibility in the community that could come out?
Life-size carrot now. I think we're going to continue just life-size carrot. I think we're just going to continue seeing more of what we've been seeing. I mean, books being produced, like you said, Josh's book, and then James's book, and my book, and then, I don't know whether Carson's wrapping it up with this one or whatever, but I think you're going to start seeing more just toys. I mean, just more figures and just more of what we've been seeing, but maybe more waves. So to build off some of the stuff that's already been out, or that's coming out, that's being planned. I just think you'll continue to see these different brands potentially expand. If the popularity is there and people want them.
I believe you're correct, because Ben and Mark have already said at Joe Fest, and they've talked to me in person, they are going to be doing more with the Robo Skull, and there's going to be expansion with that, with different characters and stuff. The logistics haven't been all taken care of, but they're going to be doing more. And Carson wants to do another wave of his recall stuff. And so I think all these lines are built so they can continue. I know Longbow wants to do more vehicles and other things like that. So I think you're correct. What's your take on it, James?
Well, just that. I mean, so Kickstarter is indeed become the new norm. You can even point at Hasbro has changed their model from, Hasbro has Lab is straight up just their Kickstarter, internal Kickstarter. And I don't blame them. I've always made the comment in college, if you want 100 people to come to your party, invite 300. And I know every one of us, we kind of alluded earlier, can reaffirm, 100 people are going to say they want something, and only 33 are going to show up with money in the hand, more times than not. I mean, barring any sort of just unique, blow it out of the water products. So you really got to hustle, and Kickstarter really takes the money, especially with these larger projects. So Dan obviously goes to Kickstarter straight up and puts the ball in their hand, great. People, minimum why I don't do it is it's like 8 to 10% of whatever you bring in goes to Kickstarter. That's the fact. And I will immediately counterpoint. When I did the fan club, I debated, and I ended up going with PayPal for 3 or 4%. But Joel Thompson and a few other guys were like, if you go to Kickstarter, you will get more exposure. So, Dan, you can chime in and confirm or counterpoint.
Yeah,
It's real quick. It's worth that 10% to give up if you're getting X amount of people on top of that. You know what I mean? To cover that 10% loss and still come out net.
I mean, you just have to be strategic. You have to know your price points. You have to know you have to know what you need to make, right? As far as at least breaking even and everything else. So I mean, it's just business, and in that sense, in my Kickstarters, they weren't always like the last one funded the quickest, and I think it funded the best, but prior to that, there were times where the first couple, I was hitting, the final night is barely hitting over. And so, I've always said to myself, because people have asked me like, why don't you think more people buy them? It's usually about 200 to 250 is what I usually get. And I usually get about 20 new people, each Kickstarter, but it doesn't mean they always come back. I don't know. Or, it always seems to be around that range of people as far as purchasing. And then a lot of people buy after, of course. But, my thing is people are like, I just don't understand why. And I'm like, here's the thing, especially at toy shows. People are focusing on their collections right now. I think people are just focused on filling in holes, getting into this. Oh, I'm coming back into the community. I want this figure I had as a kid, whatever, whatever it may be, especially at toy shows is a challenge because I do it more. I probably brought too many books with this last one, but it's more just to get out there and socialize and network with people that have the same interest. That's what I like about them. It's great to sell a couple books here and there, but if I went to a Joe Fest or whatever with maybe just one set as a showcase, just to show people, I'd be fine with that too.
Well, I bought all the books that I have, 99% of them. I think I bought a couple of James
buys them
online, but I bought them at convention. I met you guys.
James waits. But no, I'll always take a few. You have to be, you want to make back. The goal for shows is just to make back enough to pay for your fees.
Well, I don't want to.
The tables at Joe Fest, he's giving those tables away. They're not even there to make money for those booths. People are not at Joe Fest trying to make their table fees because it's like $150. It's dirt cheap for a table at Joe Fest.
A table at Joe Fest is very, very affordable. Anyone that sells anything does quite well at that show. Yeah.
Oh well,
you're usually paying for it.
I don't want to pay for shipping, but more important, I'm such a hard nosed personally on that 10% that I'd rather it all go to Dan's pocket. I've joked with Dan for years. I'm like, I'll just PayPal you the $40 right now and give it to me next time you see me. Same with Packard. Packard stuff so crisp and well, that was going to be my point. To pile on, go with what Dan was saying and then throw Packard in to boot. People do focus on the collection of the toys. That's obviously the number one. It's always going to be. But then the problem with paper products is they don't want to buy it right away because they're going to be carrying it around and they don't want it to get damaged. So that's why they don't buy it on day one, and then they forget to buy it on day 3 because they've had so much fun and they're exhausted. So
you learn. I could have done some things differently, but.
Oh, sure. Well, in a sense, I don't want to say you have to hound them, but because they want you to. They want you to remind them. Just be like, hey, man, be sure to get your book. And sure, of course, you're getting sales. That's not meant, that's words, but it really is like, it's flattering that, yes, they want it. It's easy. And I'm totally guilty of it. It's easy to get swept up and blink. And next thing you know, it's Sunday, 4:00. And you've missed 50 things on your to-do list from a week ago, ants to do.
I
To
100%
answer your
agree with you on that last statement, because this last one, I blanked and the thing was over and I was like, what the hell? I needed to do these 15 things. I didn't even get to do them.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Yeah.
to your original question, James, I think, you just have to kind of decide, your cost and everything like that to determine if it's worth the loss. Because again, you create that urgency of people getting whatever it is then, and fun and supporting it right then and there. So I mean, personally, my wife, I mean, I have some stock in house now, uh, in my office, which is always a nice topic of discussion with the spouse,
Yep.
but not that ugly, not like divorce or anything, but again, it's always about, oh well, if I can get back to that cabinet, if your books weren't in the way,
One day,
whoops,
one day you'll make
yeah,
it.
one day they'll be there.
Now, if and when you do it, Dan, real quick, PM me, let me know. And if I don't hear back from a week, we'll send a search party and dig you out.
There you go.
Go
But I
on,
mean,
sorry.
but the nice thing is I don't have that much to where if I were to buy, let's just say, I did kind of like Jason. Jason said, like, he's confident and pays for it. Could I do that? Sure, but then I may be sitting on a lot of inventory for many years, and I can't afford to do it space. And then also with my contract with Hasbro, there is a sell off period as well. So
Oh
I have
yeah,
to
yeah.
abide by that. So
Mm-hmm.
Now, since you brought this up, Dan, being really close to the limit and barely making it, the one I should say two Kickstarters that I supported wholeheartedly, I bought both of their books, was Patty Leonard, Brian Hickey, and David McDonald's
Oh
Action
yeah.
Force books over in England, but they barely made it over that threshold both times. And I felt really bad for them because their books are beautiful. They put their heart and soul into these books. Not that you guys haven't, and not that Jason doesn't with his products, but it kind of hurt me to see that the community really didn't support it. And maybe because it's a foreign product, but then the RoboSkull blew the waters off the Kickstarter numbers for future and past Kickstarter. So I don't know what the difference between what they're doing and the RoboSkull Kickstarters.
I
Maybe,
think
maybe
There's
Jason,
less
you can
popularity in the Action Force style GI Joe. There's a much smaller pool of people to pull from. One of the guys that I have in my group is Andy Blackburn, I think. He's probably the most accomplished English collector that there is. I mean, he sells probably $30,000-$40,000 every year in English GI Joes, but that's it. Like, there's not in England. There's probably only a couple of hundred versus in the United States. There's actually probably a good 15 to 20,000 of us. So they have a very small number of, well, even more than that, right? But I'm just saying, there's a very small pool of people that are going to buy what do you want to call it? An encyclopedia of the English Action Force stuff. Very limited. Carson
It's not
Metaxas,
that-
however, he can sell a lot more because there's a lot more guys in the North American market.
it's not
yeah.
real.
well, I think it's toy versus books. Again, it goes back to people
You're right.
want toys. Like that's what we're doing this. I mean,
And that's sad. That's sad, unfortunately. That's something I've dealt with is like, I try to post this beautiful product that I put all my time and effort into with a wax seal and a velvet box. And I'm trying to like tell people about this, like, yeah, but it's not a toy. And it's like, well, I mean, everyone else has toys.
yeah. I mean, and that's how I've always had to look at it. Is like if if it's a newer collector you're trying to get into buying. I mean, you got your diehards. I mean, there's names I see every single time on when I'm
Yep.
shipping books. But it's always fun to get new people. Like I said,
Mhm.
I got a lot of new people this last time. But at the same time, if it's a brand new person that's really coming back into the realm of Joe, because Classified got him into it, let's just say for now, and now they're like, ooh, I want some of that old stuff, or even the Classified. I mean, they may have to make a choice. Do I buy this $30 Classified figure or this $40 book? Well, I'm in the Classified, so I'm going to go for the figure. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's the biggest difference I would say between the book and RoboSkull being both quote unquote foreign, is just people just they wanted a toy, they wanted something like that, and that's
Yeah.
my personal opinion.
And it's absolutely the most amazing thing I've seen in forever. I mean, the Robo Skull 2 is just so cool. They really did knock that one out of the park, to say the least. You
Well,
know?
the thing about it is the Action Force books aren't just encyclopedias of figures. They're the history of that brand, like what Dan's doing. They're the artwork of the brand, like Carson's doing. They're the obviously the figure encyclopedia of the figures. They're the comic books like Roger and Josh are doing. It incorporated all four of those ideas into one book.
Right.
So I think
I mean,
that
Yeah, I
it
mean-
adds a lot to it, but it's a limited market of people. The only reason why I think I ended up getting it was because you kind of got it for me, which I appreciate. It's very nice of you. You could have gotten one for yourself, and we could have just borrowed it back and forth every now and again.
yeah, we have this thing. It's the lending library. So Jason has some stuff that I have at his house that's mine, and I have stuff at my house that's his. And we just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah,
So that's why we have such a big collection.
exactly. And the Mayflower on my wall, that's yours, but I hold on to it for you, you see.
Yeah.
That happens. I have people who have shipped me stuff to help sell, and it becomes part of my collection for a moment until I sell it, or they purchase. Like there's a gentleman who he lives in Thailand, and when he has bought in the past, he'll just have stuff shipped here. I have a separate box. I always tell my wife, like, that box, anything ever happens to me, that's not mine. So ship it to that dude if something happens. But essentially it's in my possession for a moment. And there's some cool things I've taken, he's been generous enough to lend me artwork when he comes back to the US and I scan it or whatever, and then eventually send it all back. But it's fun, and same thing with with when I was selling some stuff for Kirk. He would send me this stuff because I wanted to scan it and preserve it, and then I'd take care of all the shipping. I'm like, well, it's less work on you. So it's always fun to kind of have some of that stuff in hand too, but wholeheartedly, it's not my stuff. It's on Lent. It's Lent. What do you call it at museum?
Lend lease.
On Lent.
There you go.
You had
That's
my
on Lent for
you
now.
had my Ron rock and roll pencils for how many years?
Yeah,
Year 2,
yeah.
3. Sure. I knew it was in good hands.
Yes.
And,
But you did
and-
get it eventually, did you not? I hope.
I
I don't
did.
even remember now. Okay.
One John Cremians will certainly laugh if he came in. He lent me his built a rule because they have 2 builds for each vehicle, and I just wanted to have alternates in terms of thinking the production of producing a book and taking the photos. And I had those. I just finally gave him back to him this year.
Wow.
So it's been 11 years. If he was stressing them, I would have dug him out of my storage unit. No. But he didn't even remember. I'm like, I got a surprise for you. And he's, hey, I loved it.
Well, funny enough, there's someone who asked me to help sell some stuff, and then the story goes, I guess they had shipped it to someone else all these years ago, and this person sold some stuff, and they kind of went MIA on them. And I guess the gentleman unfortunately passed. I never learned who it was, but they passed, and the wife had found this box, and it said the gentleman's name on it, so they shipped it back to him.
Wow.
And he's like 10 years, he goes, I honestly have given up on all this stuff. Like, I just wrote it off. Like, this guy just ended up keeping it, or who knows what happened to it.
Wow.
And so, but I got some stuff now. Like I don't know what I got. I got a gem doll. Someone, wants to sell, and some Pee Wee Herman or something, some goofy, some stuff. I guess some weird, Urkel is one of them, I think. But it's fun to find it and put it in the right person's hands. Is my goal. That's always been my goal.
Nice.
So what do you guys?
Well, real quick, if you
Okay,
don't mind
yeah.
me chiming in, I can give you some factoids on the UK. Yeah, I went to roll call 2003 or 3 and 4. I think that was 11 and 12. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, their passion per capita rallies us in the thousands, but it's a very small, passionate subgroup. And then unfortunately, it's just a simple truth, a common theme that we've discussed this evening, that, with that less amount of people, there's less people out there in the world that have that nostalgic passion for Action Force, and then became, UK G.I. Joe. And, us dialed. the four of us are not an accurate representation. Let's not mince words. And everybody listening to this, if you join the G.I. Joe fan club, you're into G.I. Joe probably more than most people that are into G.I. Joe. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's each their own and how much you want to commit to anything in life. But the casual fan, no, it's sure if that book was given to them as a Christmas present, they'd absolutely love it. It'd be right there on their shelf amongst all their other books, trade paperbacks and whatever they choose to do with their free time. But that's just the honest truth, that not as many people are going to have that nostalgic value for Action Force, despite the fact that Action Force transformed into the UK G.I. Joe, which there's so many parallels, starting with what our 85 figures is, Flint and I mean, they changed little things, but it's our exact Flint, their Flint and their Dusty is our Flint and our Dusty, and so on and so forth. They don't have, I mean, it's just the way the world works. Nothing new
They
about it.
did add new characters, like the Stalker is not Stalker. I think it's like Jammer. Some of the characters are different. Like their Outback is a distinctly different Outback. There is more Tiger Force characters added, more Slaughters, Marauders characters added, and there's some other Night Force people and things. There are differences. To your point, there are a lot of similarities as well. Destro was Jackal, I think, and there's a few other things, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the foreign toy market's a whole nother. That's another ball. I went into it a little bit. I got Satan and Ninja Cube way back when, but I didn't go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole different rabbit hole, and that's an expensive rabbit hole.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Well, to clarify, so that's why I landed with
No, I
Flint,
agree.
the 85 figures, and what David's getting at, that when it was, to recap with everybody, that Action Force was a 5 POA unique thing entirely, with Skip and a bunch of other guys. Maybe somebody out there wants to write an article for G.I. Joe Fan Club. We'd love to have it in the newsletter. Shameless plug. Or until then, go to you do a browser search for them. But yeah, when that early in the 82 to 84 ish. Well, I can speak to it in terms of our timeline. Forgive me, or our Action Force. International members, feel free to chime in and correct me. Our 85 figures were probably a year or two after, but whatever. What David's getting at, they had access to our 82, 83 molds, but they used them to make their own unique characters still under the brand name of Action Force. It wasn't until they got hold of our 83, 84 tooling where they started to just simply produce more docks and snow jobs, and I think Snow Job Action Force carded is an insanely rare carded figure over there. But then they started kind of just, if you think of it as a grayscale from black to gray to white, that's their gray area until they finally landed on. It's now G.I. Joe. Sorry, Palatoy Action Force, you had a good run.
Right.
Go with
Then they
the
just use
grace.
the same names.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they use
same
the
looking
names, and
Yeah.
barring some art issues here or there in Country X,
Yeah.
where they had to remove
Can't have a
weapons.
gun. Can't have a gun in your
Yeah.
hand. You have to just kind of do this on the card artwork. Yeah.
But then to round it home, yes, David's still is indeed correct that in that G.I. Joe line, like, wasn't the Tiger Force figures, weren't they the Cancel American Wave 2? So there is some
Yeah.
some
They
sort
had,
of correlation
Sneak
to
Peek, Hit and Run, Outback, Psych Out. Those, I think, are the big four.
Blizzard.
Tunnel Rat too. So those are the
And
big
Tunnel Rat.
5 figures that everyone kind of wants to have. I think I have 1 or 2 foreign figures, and it's literally just the Outback Tiger Force. That's about it.
Yeah. So those have a loose tie. Those are at least in the run to be, from an American standpoint. But then yes, the mutton, the spirit with the red trim. I have to believe the rock Viper head, Crimson Guard Immortal, just has to be some sort of tooling issue, faux pas that just slapped it on there.
The problem is that the Crimson Guard Immortal with the Rock Viper head, the English one, was released in 1992 into 1993.
The moment you started
That
talking,
was
I knew where
needed
you're
very
going with it. Yep.
specifically for
Yep.
Something, you know.
Oh, hey.
It was needed very specifically for something else, you know, that Hasbro was doing at the time. So they couldn't just lend out the mold for that figure.
That's right.
You know.
So yeah,
Go ahead.
they did indeed have, yeah, they did need to have like some really niche 5 or 10 post our 1985 characters, but for all intents and purposes, barring any art in their comics and, you know, supplemental media, it was our Joes when they're with their specific, you know, warnings and legalese.
So that kind of brings us around to the end of this discussion, and I want to touch base on this last thing. As a whole, the fan base and the community have supported the Kickstarters in different degrees and varying capacities, and there's a lot of different stuff out there. I feel that the community has been very supportive, mostly very supportive of a lot of these Kickstarters the last few years, and there's different varying degrees of that, depending upon the money people are putting. If you include HasLabs in there, then that's a whole nother ball game, and I don't really want to go to HasLabs because that's the numbers. It skews the numbers quite a bit, but the community has been pretty good in supporting a lot of these products, and the varying differences and the varying products themselves has proven that the community is willing to support the brand as a whole. And myself as a person, I am a very I would call all-in type collector to a certain extent. I want to support the brand because I want the brand to be around for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of the collectors today, I think they feel the same way. They want this brand to stay. And that's why a lot of the guys from the 60s, we helped support that a little bit too, as that was waning. And Jason, our other co-host, Jason Morrell, got his son Alexander into 12-inch Joes. And I do see some of the 12-inch younger people coming into that as well. So as a fan group, as a community, how do you guys feel that we are doing as a fan community, being supportive and being there for these Kickstarters and overall the brand?
I'll start. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, phenomenal. I mean, obviously, I'm the guy getting the ball rolling with the G.I.Joe fan club, but you know, I'm gonna, you know, you think I'd be biased, but no, you can't convince me otherwise. Like we all joke about the worst thing about Property X is the fans. You know, point the finger at Star Wars. It's the biggest one. That's transcends in the main media. That's a joke that I think every Star Wars fan listening would agree and laugh. And but everybody says that. You'll see some, oh, I hate Joe fans. Or, you know, hear these side comments, but honestly, sure, that's fun. You know, there's nothing wrong with some self-deprecating humor or looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing what you are. But all jokes aside, you can't convince me otherwise that the Joe, you know, community as a whole is a heck of a positive experience. Going from the Joe Con to Joe Fest to AR to the Coil, NJCC. I've never done a SoCal show, but you know, like every time I talk to Evan and everybody else, it's the same story. And every show in between, Dan's a great example of him. Tell me if I'm wrong, like, because you, me, Carson, we all play ball as book guys, and we talk shop behind closed doors, and we share all the inside baseball. We're not in. Okay, I throw in Roger and Josh, the new guys. We're not undercutting each other.
No.
Who are these jerks stepping on the book thing? That's my thing. No, it's the exact opposite. And
yeah,
I want them. I mean, we're in our own separate pools of sorts,
yeah.
but still, we're doing all the inside baseball, and hey, this looks great, but fix this here, and no, nobody's snitty, upset that somebody's pointing it out. We want the best for each other, I think.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And I,
Go ahead, Dan.
good, James.
no, just to round out the thought, I think, that's a direct example between Dan, Carson, Josh, and Roger and I. I can cite firsthand, but even take that and step it out. I think, with Packard and you, David, and everybody else, everybody really wants everybody to succeed. And sure, I'm biased, but the bonus part is all our group really puts out some phenomenal stuff. I mean, it's not like I'm buying garbage just to support my buddy. Like, I'm really excited for what's coming. Like, I want to own that piece of plastic. It can be produced by
yeah, I
a
agree with you
somewhere in the
100%.
corner.
I agree
I'd
with
still
you
buy it.
100%. Oh, sorry, I keep talking over you.
No,
I
you're fine. You're fine.
I agree with you 100% because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. This whole thing is because I loved what you guys were doing, and I loved the products that everybody was putting out there, and I supported all those products, and I wanted to talk them up. I wanted other people to know that they exist outside this community, and I doubt there's too many people outside this community that I'm reaching, but you never know. So go ahead, Dan. You were going to say something?
I mean, a couple different points. I mean, when James brought up the G.I. Joe Club itself, or bringing it back, I was excited, and he and I had a long conversation about it. And I'm 110% behind him because, it is a community effort, and it started a long time ago. I mean, it's just started. I mean, that's what's funny is sometimes we don't know each other or we now know maybe more, but even just this last year, I was talking to someone and I mentioned Dan's Joe's. He's like, "Oh, you're Dan's Joe's," and because we all knew each other by our handles back on the forums back in the day.
Yeah.
And and that's just how we knew each other. I mean, I didn't know this person from this person. Now we've learned, but there's still new people. I was like, oh, you're that guy. Or I found an email from a guy. He's like, yeah, we used to did some dealings back in the day. I'm like, did we? And then sure enough, I have an old email I came across like a week ago. It's like, sure enough, we did back in 2002. But to build out the community, I think it is a community effort. As a creator, as someone who does what I do, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, I mean, I'm just appreciative for anybody who supports the projects. I don't expect, even though even in my pre-pro or pro Joe groups, sometimes it's baffling. Sometimes James and I have talked about there's over 1,000 members. Now I know some of those groups, the Star Wars and He-Man and WWF, so there's a little bit of a mixture. But I mean, even ARAH and some of the other groups. I mean, Jason, how many do you have in your group now?
1,270.
Nice.
Okay, so and like I said earlier, I mean, I usually sell maybe close to 200, 250. Let's say we'll max out 300. I don't think I've ever hit that, and I'm okay with that. I know it's a very niche book. I think hopefully long term, maybe once I'm done with the series in 5-10 years, maybe some of the stuff, maybe if it hits secondary market, maybe some people will enjoy it. Because really, my role has been to preserve it. So, from my standpoint, I've been very grateful for everybody who's supported the projects. With other stuff I've tried to do, I mean, when I try to sell for some former Hasbro people, I try to put things into people's hands that I know they'll keep them. I understand everybody has the right to flip and sell something they buy and yada, yada, yada. But, I do keep an eye on that because the whole goal why people come to me and trust me is try to really get it in the hands of people. They're going to keep it because they value it. And so that's important to me as a person. But overall, I mean, I think I'll tell you this. When I was at Joe Fest, the very last Joe Con, the very last Joe Con, at that time, HasCon was still maybe going to be a thing. We didn't know. Daryl and I talked about the second one and some different ideas and stuff, but we weren't sure what was going to happen with it. But when Joe Con was ending, and Joe Fest was kind of still brand new, nobody really knew. I know some people attended it, but I don't know if everybody knew where it was going to head, where it is now. When I heard people go up and speak at the very end of the show, one of them, I think it was Ace, was just kind of touched upon. You realize what's that?
I just Ace is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Positive
Ace. I love
energy.
Ace.
Yeah.
Oh, that dude, I love him to death. But when he spoke, and others as well, and I think even yeah, I mean, when he spoke though about like his daughter was like this young when he started going to these shows, and I don't know how old she was then, but it was like I started thinking to myself like, man, this is like a family event for a lot of people. Like this is important. Like this is something like this is their trip every year. They go to Florida or whatever. They go to Indiana or whatever with JoeCon, wherever it was, Colorado. This is a family ordeal, and for like him especially is like, wow, like this is something he probably looked forward to every year. Brought his daughter along every year, and that to me meant something, and it kind of showed the type of people I think we have in this community. That I would love to bring my son. I mean, I was hoping to bring him back when COVID hit, because that was going to be the first year I was going to bring him. But sometimes it's always the nerves of, well, he's going to be with me selling books. It's kind of boring. He's going to be sitting there at a table, bored. So once I'm done with the books, he's going to be a little bit older, but I think he'll come to a show with me. And then we can, he may not be into toys as much as he was if I had brought him earlier, but it is what it is, right? But just to wrap it up with, I think it's a great community. I think what James is doing here is great. Kind of bringing everybody back together. I think we'll see the same thing, James, where maybe people didn't jump on it right away, but now they will. Just because of the content, I hope that, I know some of the things that you shared as far as who's contributing and people are, and I mean, there's a lot of insight. And so, and I'm a big history buff with Joe. So I love reading and hearing stuff that maybe others have discovered. So
Dan has a stellar article in issue 1. Spoilers. So,
well, I wasn't saying that, but I mean, other people that you mentioned is what I was looking forward to.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah. And I can't stress it enough. If anybody's out there listening, you really got something as simple as my kid had a G.I. Joe birthday party. Great. Write something up. We'll fit it in somewhere, to Dan giving the history of some wild unproduced figure, which is not the article, but maybe you never know. That sort of thing. One quick anecdote I still think is funny is I've known you guys. You mentioned the old forums, since we've started doing. I personally started doing it in 2001, like really getting active, and there's plenty of guys out there before that. I can't find people on my phone sometimes because I forget that I put them their online handle. So I had Mike Irizarry as Beachhead for the longest time, and about once a year I got to go in there. I got to change this. I've known this guy for too long, Yeah. And one more point. Another one to your point, to support it with the family. In 2005 in Minneapolis, I ran into the corner with a guy named Garriman Courtney, who I think he's still kind of active in a sense, but we were laughing, yucking it up. We were hanging out with the boss fight, Devil's Due guys around the corner, and there's Katie, Debbie, and Gary. Katie's in the store, couldn't even talk. I just went to her graduation this summer. So it's truly, high school graduation. I was very proud, happy, and, it felt good to be invited, let alone make it and support them growing up.
I can't remember, did Gary speak at the JoeCon? Can't remember if he did.
I think he did, yes.
Yeah, so here's another one. Like, just I think that's what touched me. It's like, wow, like this is an event. Again, this is a family event. Like they come every year with their children, and it means something to them outside of just, my wife went to JoeCon 2010. That was her first, and that was her last. And I'm cool with that. Like it's not her thing, and it never has been. And she, I really wanted to do the Hasbro tour. That's why that was my first show. Like every other year prior, I couldn't make it. Just I had weddings this year. This year I had already used all my, I live 3,000 miles away from my family. So it's like JoeCon family. You go see. Now I just choose JoeCons over family, of course. But
but that's what she knows. I was just gonna say, she knows that you're just hanging out with the guys. Like it's still in a family, positive, fun environment. You're not zipping around.
Here's our future.
Yeah,
Here's our future right here.
Oh, there you go. Oh, hey, what's up, bud?
Hi, future.
You future collector, Noah? Yeah.
Well, he's got an easy in with a dad's torch to pass.
Yeah.
But look,
There you
turn
go.
around. I'm staring at that collection the whole time.
So, Jason, what's your take on the fan support and the fans' position in the community and the future of this brand?
To summarize it very short, I think it's very positive. I think that we have a lot of people who are investing a lot of their time and money into what they believe in, and they have a good what do I want to say? Like the products that are coming out nowadays speak to them. That's the reason why, like, you look at the Kickstarters, for example, it's exploded. It's at a level that I've never seen. Joe Fest is attendance. You know, Joe Fest is now the world's premier G.I. Joe convention. It had like, I think it was around 7,000 people in attendance last time. It was some ridiculously huge number. It's so much bigger than it ever was before. I think the brand is doing quite well, and it's looking to be advancing for probably several years. We're going to be probably growing for another 5 to 10 years, if not more.
Yeah. When was your first show, Packard?
My first Joe Con was, believe it or not, 2010 in Rhode Island.
Okay.
And I went on a whim because I had some, you know, friends of mine that, you know, we used to hang out and do trivia and stuff like that in Worcester. And one of them, who was kind of a G.I. Joe fan like me, he said that, hey, Joe Con's at the Rhode Island Convention Center in Providence, let's go. So we all just ran down, got in the car, and I was like, oh my God. I ended up buying quite a few stuff because my collection was mostly dormant from the late 90s to the 2010, but that it kind of reawakened my awareness of the brand and how much I liked it. Since then, though, I didn't do too much until I went to MegaCon in 2017, 2018, and Adam Riches said, so you're going to go to JoeCon since it's the last one. And I'm like, oh no, I better look into that. And then I went in 2018. I met David Allen, and then I bought a lot of G.I. Joe since then. I'm very thankful that I kind of jumped back in 2016 and 2019 and completed everything I needed, because nowadays it's hard to find almost anything you really want, really, you know. But yeah,
Sure.
I think the brand's doing quite well. There's a lot of good products. If you attend a couple of shows a year, you're going to find almost everything you're looking for sure.
And the thing I find interesting though is yeah, to his point, I think, you know, the toys are what's going to carry it. You know, we've had movies come out. To be honest, Snake Eyes was, because I mean, personally, before Classified, we knew about a Snake Eyes movie, and like, if this thing flops, this brand potentially could be dead. Like, that was just my personal opinion. I'm like, oh, this thing, and it, you know, I'm not going to bash it. It wasn't my favorite movie, but the brand's doing well. The brand's doing well. Not a movie, but based on what it's always done well on, and that's creating good toys. You know, now they're collectibles. I mean, I don't know how many kids are into the Classified. I mean, it's a little pricey for a kid to get a $20, $25, $30 figure, but it is what it is in today's age. But my point is, I mean, it's the toy that's carrying the torch for this brand, in my opinion, and they've been doing a great job. I think HasLab with the His Tank showed that. You know, with the support that it got. I mean, so I'm looking forward to seeing what we get in the upcoming, you know, couple of years here. So,
So
Absolutely.
why don't we really quickly go over each of your projects that you have coming up? I'll give a little update on your project. Don't go super detailed because we're going to wrap this up. James.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, here I am, G.I. Joe fan club. I mean, that's full steam. As far as my personal, because fan club is personal to me, but just me. I consider me just being the guide, or the doors open for anybody and everybody to come in and make something happen. This is why I'm not saying me, but rank and file. I still have volume 6 to finish the accessory guide, and once I think the fan club is really just full steam ahead, we'll finish that up. And with the newer stuff, the retro and the classified, just funny enough, since it's me to me, the G.I. Joe Fan Club newsletter is a great avenue to keep everybody updated with rank and file style layouts until complete books, pages of worth of books are made, and it'll become public to everybody.
Cool. Jason.
So right now, as you guys might know, I'm doing a Create a Cobra Challenge coin. And there are 2 chase variants to that. So there's Create a Cobra, the primary strike, all right, which is the obvious one, right? And there's going to be 100 of those. There is also going to be 60 of the Create a Coil, which is derived from the Coil Trooper, of course, because all these figures use the Targat mold. And there's going to be a second chase variant called the Invent an Iron Grenadier, which is basically, again, it's the same idea. It's a color palette swap for the coin. There's going to be some accoutrements with each of them. One of them is a familiar one that, we kind of got with the figure that was an afterthought that is very rare nowadays. I had it professionally reproduced on vinyl, and it looks gorgeous. And the other one is something we never got. But, maybe it's something similar to what we could have gotten, should have gotten back in the day.
Nice.
So, and there's only going to be 35 of the Iron Grenadier ones. So I always do a limited run for multiple reasons. One of which is it takes time to sell a nearly unlimited number of these. So I only do 100 coins. And then if I do a chase variant, I usually do like 50 or 25 depending. So limited number. And if anyone wants any of them, they can contact me and just give me what they want for their code name, because every coin's engraved. And that's my snippet.
And Dan, I know you have 2 books that's hot and heavy coming off the press pretty soon. What do you got coming down after that?
So again, I had the crazy idea of doing 2 books at once, but 9 and 10 will be out together. So you can save some shipping on getting both at the same time, so I'll be good. But so I had those 2 books. Again, maybe another 2 to 3 that'll come out in 23, and then that should be wrapping up the series. One of the big ones will be the Defiant. That will be featured in number 12. Actually, one thing I've been talking to a lot of the former Hasbro guys, because there's so many people involved in that. Probably here in the next 2 months, I'm going to set up a Zoom call, because we've done a Zoom call before during COVID, just kind of like a little mini, because as some of you may know, I go up to Rhode Island, I do like a mini reunion with these guys, right? Every so many years. And so during COVID, we just did a online or a Zoom call one. And
Nice.
what I'm hoping to do is gather everybody, and we're going to have just a giant discussion on the Defiant, because so many people were involved, and just sit back and listen. And share out in the book eventually about that project, because I mean, again, there were so many people involved in that, from marketing and engineering and design. I mean, it's crazy. So that's coming out, so I'm excited about that. The Rattler will be in a future one. 85 Snake Eyes will be in a future one. Outside of that, not much as far as just wrapping up the book series, I guess, and those can be found at www.creatinggijoe.com. So pretty simple to find the books. Again, outside of that, just we'll see what the future brings once I'm done. Like I said, I've had some ideas on a line, but I'll be taking probably a little bit different route than a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see if I can get this thing off the ground after kind of shelving it for a couple years.
Oh,
Great.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. All these updating products too.
And real quick, for anybody involved, and definitely you guys, we've talked about it at this point. Maybe, and I apologize if we haven't. You'll be able to see, not only have a QR code for anybody that's writing an article, i.e. Dan, in this instance with issue 1. Not only there'll be a little bio that'll just say his website, but then there'll be a link to the contributor section of the webpage, which. Okay, so it's when I said once the G.I. Joe fan club's in full steam ahead, that'll be up there. And for forever and a day, Dan and David and Packard you'll have their information. You can follow up, and they'll update if they want to, you know, feel have the ability to send me updates anytime and tell us what they're up to.
And that brings me to you, the fans of G.I. Joe, the fan club out there. This content is an extra addition to your package, to your fan club goals, I guess. So you will be able to view this on the Facebook G.I. Joe fan club page, and then the YouTube G.I. Joe fan club page. All of our episodes will be on there live. If you have any comments, you want to suggest some upcoming topics for upcoming episodes, or if you want to criticize Mr. David Allen for wearing that weird hat or whatever, feel free. I'm open to taking all criticisms. Hopefully we'll be all polite and respectful. So I want to thank you guys for another great episode, and I will see you in the G.I. Joe community out there. Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe. Well, thank you. Yes, thank you, Dan and Packard, definitely for coming on. And I can't thank David enough, as always. You know, David's the man. This is the he's herding the cats, or at least the cat of one me. He's keeping me. But thank you, David. It's always appreciated.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate
you
you guys. It's good just chatting and hanging out, and again, like minds, and again, it's a community effort. So again, I love what you're doing, James. 110%, like I said, behind you. So anything I can do to make it, you know, better or just grow it, you know, I'm behind you. So
I really appreciate that, Dan. And again, I appreciate you guys too, Packard, David, and everybody else listening. Yes, I certainly can't thank you guys enough. I'm really excited. I hope you guys continue to see where this goes.
Great. Well, we'll see you next time on G.I. Joe Fan Club Live.